Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. My name is Dan Vaughan. My partner Paul Morgan's with us as well as we come to you with baseball's best mate. Let's cue that open in 3, 2, 1. Let's roll the show open. Let's go. Talking Baseball Australia on the air now. I have no idea if that worked. It sounded good in my ears, and a guy who sounds really good in our ears, a guy who always his tones sound wonderful. Here he is, the one and only Paul Morgan joining me. He's in the west of Australia this morning as we come your way all across the globe. Good morning to you, sir. How's the coffee this morning?
Coffee is okay, DV. Coffee's actually very good. I needed the coffee this morning. A bit of a lackless, sleepless night in some respects. Up early, walking the dog, but ready to talk some baseball. Excited for you, and of course, you caught up with Cam Vale, which will be great for us and great to hear about what Cam's got going on. And another crazy week of baseball, DV.
Crazy week of baseball. A lot to digest, a lot to get into. I want you guys questions and comments. We're going to roll Cam's interview. I just shot it in the last hour. So this is all fresh off the presses, so to speak. You may have seen the announcements he made as well and some of the things we dive into that. I think it's good stuff. And we're also going to jump into some other little odds and ends. But what I do want to do for the show is he's going to do this down the road in a couple of weeks when the schedule actually comes out. But you're going to have questions and comments. Go ahead and fire them away. When the interview's done, we'll fire them away as well and try to give you guys our best take as well. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it, partner. How about it? Talking Baseball Australia. This again just shot shortly, not too long ago, a couple hours ago, actually in the last hour. Is what I'm saying. So let's roll the.
You need a coffee too.
Yeah, I've had coffee all day, mate. Let's go ahead and roll it. This is Cam Vale and I from earlier in the evening, and here we go. Talking Baseball Australia is on the air with Baseball Australia CEO Cam Vale right here on Talking Baseball Australia. Well, Talking Baseball Australia continues as promised. We've headlined this guy. He's a headliner today. The CEO of Baseball Australia, Cam Vale, joined us. Cam, good morning to you. Evening for me, morning for you, and Paul in Australia. First off, are you staying safe?
Definitely staying safe. It's good to be a headliner on your show, Dan. I'm in the house with my wife, 2 kids, and the dog, and I'm running fifth. I'm no headliner here, so it's good to be in your world for the next period of time and having a chat about baseball.
In my house, I'm also down the list too. The daughter, wife, I'm down the bottom. The cat and the dog outrank me, so I get it. Let's say off the top, where are we with the schedule? It's that time we kind of expect, and we've seen and heard, and some of the things have been written. Where are we with the baseball schedule for the Australian Baseball League for 2021?
Yeah, so if I compared it to running a marathon, we probably hit the 38K mark, about 6-7 weeks ago, and we are literally getting there slowly and surely to the finish line. So we're pretty close. The main, certainly working with all the teams, but in different manners. We've had group sessions, obviously. We've had individual discussions, and there's a lot of debate, as there normally is with the schedule, now overlaid with COVID-19 and all the concerns. So I think it's always difficult to predict in this world, but I would say that we will have the the schedule locked away by the end of the month, and the structure around that. And like most things at the moment, there may be some contingencies and plan Bs, but we're pretty close. We've probably got it down to 3 clear options, and I expect we can move forward pretty quickly.
That was my next question, plan A, B, C. I actually wrote down question, plan A, B, and C. And you and I have chatted a little bit over the course of the last few months, and I know you've been busy with all kinds of things to see what would stick against the wall. You mentioned 3 plans. You're confident going forward that 3 plans? Is there a 4th or 5th back there? Are you really focused on those 3 plans?
Look, I mean, if you had have asked me if I could narrow it down to three, 2 weeks ago, they'd probably be slightly different to what they are now and a month ago and so on. So what we're trying to do, working with the teams, is to create options. We take all the feedback of what teams would normally want with the schedule. So we've had that. We've had philosophical and almost long-term debates about what the ABL should look like. So we've had that overlaid in the discussions. And then there's the risk reward of what to do through COVID-19. So overlaying all of those, we've certainly got different options, and in particular when it comes to having teams like Geelong, Korea, and Auckland, that definitely has a significant complexity that just has to be managed. And all the teams are good, whether it's those two teams or the 6 domestic Australian teams, to try to work through. It's funny, I'm getting a lot of sympathy because we are literally, I reckon, onto the 100th different version of what we could do. But I have far greater sympathy for the teams because they are the ones that have to manage, largely through this period. So it's been in a lot of ways, it brings people closer together, even though there's a lot of heated at times and difficult discussions and debate and the like. But you can tell everyone's intent is right, both for what the baseball season should be, and to be honest, to being, call it good corporate citizens in this environment that with COVID-19, we have to plan around that, and we're very respectful for the challenges that people are facing way outside of, sport and baseball delivery. So, we'll get there. We'll have options on, but there's no doubt there will be, you have to go into a COVID-19 world pivoting and being able to, that fine print that's always there, season or schedule or time subject to change. I mean, if there's ever a time that's going to be clear, it's now.
Oh, who will the final call go to? Will it be the league? Will it be the teams? Will it be a combination of the two? Will it be, how will that final decision be made as far as you go with plan A, B, or C? Who makes that call?
Yeah, look, ultimately, it's Baseball Australia's decision to make. But it'd be fair to say we will be taking the input of the teams, and whether that gets to a majority direction or the best sort of arguments that are mounted towards which way we go. I mean, look, again, a credit to the team owners. We're largely on the same page. It's just a matter of these different opinions on what options maybe should lead ahead of others. So the input of the teams is critical, but ultimately the decision has to be made by BA, and then we get on with it as best as we possibly can. I mean, it's certainly the influence of other sports is going to be significant as well. This is the other factor. So what happens with cricket and the tennis, and particularly around international exemptions or how that might be structured. Our own COVID-19 plan we'll have to submit to the federal government. Will also come into play even once the season and a structure is set to go, all right, well, can we responsibly deliver it? That will also be very important.
Cam Vale, Dan Vaughan with you here. Talking Baseball Australia is the show, baseball's best mate, and so happy to have the CEO of Baseball Australia on. Okay, let's continue to kind of go down this theme here, because this is what everybody really wants to know. A couple of questions that were given to me. First off, a bubble seems unlikely. I mean, would that be safe to say a bubble would be an unlikely scenario because of the size of the league, the financial ramifications? Would I be safe saying that a bubble is probably unlikely?
I mean, people listening are probably going to hate the fact that I'm always going to have a safety net to any answer. It's certainly, it's been discussed, no doubt about that, as an option, and seeing what other sports are doing, because of the way our league operates, and certainly the team owners that put their money into this league and invest in this league. Some form of home and away content is pretty important. I think where a bubble, or probably what we're calling a hub or hubs, may come about is if there was an outbreak. So here during the season, then clearly for teams to play, they may have to temporarily shift. It might be that the home team now has to play away based on the fact that something's happened in that home city. But it'd be fair to say hubs are still an option, but not as an 8-team hub. At that stage, that would be getting towards, well, we're so deep in, we have to play now. And it would also be, as we're seeing with, I think, literally every hub in sport, if it's backed on broadcast, then you're playing in a hub. Whereas what we might look at, or we certainly have looked at, is variations on that might mean, well, 2 teams might go to one location for a period. Maybe 4 teams might go for a period to help reduce the risk. So it's almost like a tournament style baseball model in season could be part of the mix, absolutely. But that might not be from start to finish. That might be at the start or at the finish or at a particular period where we go for all sorts of reasons. 2 teams or 4 teams are going to be in one location. Geelong Career is another great example where, you know, a lot of they are a broadcast-focused model, right? So they, you know, if there's no broadcast, they're not playing back in a career. So as much as we'd love to be able to keep them in Geelong, and that's obviously on the cards, if that meant they had to hub for a season somewhere else, well, that would be an example where, you know, a hub or a mini bubble would be in the schedule.
As far as rosters, I mean, we don't know the schedule, but maybe looking down the road, any roster adjustments? I mean, larger rosters perhaps this year. You know, MLB's done that. I know the American Association has done that as well in the States. Any roster adjustments you see? Larger rosters perhaps this year? Something the league might do for larger player pool?
Yeah, I think once the structure is set, then we have a separate chat with the teams to go, okay, now this structure's in place. What does that mean? Because there's the potential for condensed sort of format or again, weeks inside the season that may need to be quite different to what we've had in the past. So, you know, running with the traditional typical model we've had for certainly the last few years, if it's 4 games a week, you know, Thursday to Sunday, and that changes to 6 games a week, or for a particular week we're cramming games in, I think that having mature discussions as a group is with the teams has to be considered. So whether it's larger squads, or again, even for particular periods during the season that we need to adjust. What we try not to do is obviously do rules on the run. And that's been a criticism in the past, and I definitely accept that. That's, you know, you still want to deliver your season with as much integrity around the winning and losing as you possibly can. So I think when it comes down to, you know, whether squads are different or sizes, or even just rule changes that have to be implemented for a period, you know, I think in this world at the moment, you sit down with the team owners, go, what's fair? What's fair on the athletes? So athlete welfare and that has to come into play. And as we with both our national athletes and having international athletes, you know, we have to be careful about how those athletes are managed. And then you look at, okay, well, what's fair and equitable to the team? So I think as long as it's not, you know, haphazard rules on the run, then absolutely there, whether it's a stretch or periods that we have to look at things differently, those conversations could be on the cards.
Status of imports. I mean, I obviously travel across. Obviously, first off, factors going into it: travel across state lines, travel from the big cities, getting out of the country, all that. That's all obviously. Those seem to be legitimate factors that the leagues have to take in consideration. What about bringing in players overseas wise? Do you feel like the travel restrictions could limit the import pool this year?
Look, it could. I think the approach that we're taking is probably twofold at the moment. So the first one is with both Geelong Career and to a lesser degree Auckland. Auckland is about, well, will there be, you know, will they be able to travel to Australia? Can Australian teams travel to Auckland? So we're looking at that almost in isolation. Geelong Career is then like bringing in a complete international team. So having a conversation with the federal government about, well, if for example, cricket had an exemption to bring in the Indian cricket team for the cricket this summer, there would probably be a path for us to look at, well, how does that apply to a team like Geelong Career?
Gotcha.
And then separately, you've got the international, you know, players from the professional leagues primarily, but also from the independent leagues. That I think the more we can group people as an application or a process to government, certainly increases the chances. But there's no doubt it's a real complexity at the moment, because if we were doing it today, it would almost be impossible. I mean, the advice from government is very clear. It's about, you know, limited international exposure. And then when that is created, it's for Australian residents and citizens to return first and foremost, and then it's the options to go. But I think one of the things that's in our not in our advantage, but is favourable to us, is that, you know, baseball with its international reach into the United States and Asia means that, you know, imports are important for playing, but they are also helping us with exposure, and then by extension, you know, that's good for the country. So the best chance for imports, I think, will be if there is some stability with where we're at in Australia and New Zealand, the ability then to go, well, this is a sport that's looking to survive and thrive through this. So this could be part of our ability to get to the other side. You know, I know government will take everything into consideration, but, you know, I'd be a foolish person to sort of second guess, you know, how state governments will operate, federal governments, and domestic borders inside the country for playing. It would certainly be a big challenge as well. And it's almost like, if there's domestic borders in place, then international borders are going to be very tight. So that sort of domino effect of, you know, the more the country is sort of open for internal travel would probably suggest there's more chance for trans-Tasman bubble, and then probably more chance for the internationals. And look, as an example, you know, for Geelong Korea, it's also about quarantining back in Korea. That is a complication that KBO teams would be unlikely to send players. They might send, we might get the exemption, it's all looking good, we've got them in Geelong or another location, but if they have to quarantine for 2 weeks in February in Korea, that could be a deal breaker.
Talking Baseball Australia, Dan Vaughan with you, along with Cam Vale, CEO of Baseball Australia. A couple things to wrap this thing up. If there ever was a year, Cam, for maybe outside the box thinking, experimental things, maybe just doing things. I mean, 2020 is a do-over year anyway, right? We're living March 1st. It's like March 300th, right? So by the time the season comes around, there's a dang good chance outside the box thinking may be important. You mentioned earlier weaving and moving and being able to kind of adjust this thing on the fly. Major League Baseball, the American Association, Korea, Taiwan have all done that. If there ever was a year to do something outside the box, this would be it. Have you gone with that thought as the lead CEO, that maybe some outside the box thinking may be in play this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to, because you're also looking at all your options to get through. You're also looking at your options on the other side. And for us, as you know, baseball, as you know, let's not call ourselves a second-tier sport. Let's call ourselves an emerging sport in Australia.
There you go. I like that. I like that attitude, mate. I like it.
Well, yeah, you got to try and spin the positives.
Absolutely.
And it is a positive, right? Like, there's to be an emerging sport, but you have to at times think, well, it's going to be difficult to compete with the bigger sports here on the same playing field. So what do we do differently? So a lot of those have come, a lot of discussion on that. And a number of the teams are very progressive with their thinking. You then balance that too with the fact that we still want to deliver baseball as close to, you know, a pure product as you possibly can. But absolutely, it's coming into play with various ideas. That adds to the complexity, but it also adds to the opportunity, because there's no doubt, you know, we're getting some really good and interesting broadcast interest from partners, and a bit of that is to go, well, what are you guys going to do differently to get through that could be appealing, not just now but in the future? So look, it's a juggling act, and I think, but there's a lot of things on the table, and you know, when you see that MLB, you know, will play 7 innings doubleheaders. I mean, if you had asked that question 6 months ago, not saying that's what we're doing, but you know, you look at everything. But if you'd go, there's not a chance in the world under any circumstance they would do that. And you know, this is proving that this is the chance to put everything on the table. Someone said to me, just whenever there's been a taboo or something you can't talk about in your sport, now's the time to talk about it.
Yep, that's it. That's it. Congratulations, too. Great news. Let's shift to the final thing, final thing. Great news for the league, for our game growing in Australia with the MLB agreement. Congratulations to you. Walk us through that timeline. Was it pretty easy negotiation? It seems like, at least from my standpoint, talking to folks in the major league organizations, that it's a no-brainer. How was that from your standpoint?
Well, it's good. Again, like any negotiation, we we maybe had a couple of little challenges at the start, but again, all the uncertainty and everything else that's in play, I think made that the early part difficult. But MLB have been a great partner with us for a long time, as have the professional leagues in Asia too. So,
Right.
I like to group them all together. But MLB has had, that long history with us from the second version of the ABL starting again, and their input in owning that and getting that off the ground in 2010. So so the partnership's always, they've been keen to extend, keen to work with us. They've been a good partner for a long period of time, and the interest is so high at the moment. So MLB clubs interest to send players, and which is great for us, right? This is also part of the opportunity that we have. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, I've got to make that really clear. I mean, the ABL, we've done some great work in the last 2 years. We've got a great group of owners investing in the competition. And if anything doesn't occur this year, it'll be a pause. And this could have been one. This could have been one of those.
Right.
Look, we can't do anything this year. We want to work with you. Let's do it down the future. And we would have accepted that. But to MLB's credit, getting the deal done is great. Basically, so it's a sanctioned league for players to play in, obviously from MLB clubs, and how that can help us in the future is very important. So I think getting it done is really important. It's going to give us a chance to have a really strong season, and it's a good outcome. I'm glad we've been able to get it done.
On that, what piqued their interest? I have an idea, but I want to get it from your standpoint. What piques MLB's interest? Why Australia? Why so far away for them?
Yeah, look, I think certainly, and being a bit patriotic here, the country as far as, safety and being a good place for players to come and play, I think has always been a factor. The increasing standard of the ABL is, from a playing side, is also really important. And the ABL clubs, I think, have done a pretty good job at being great hosts to clubs, looking after their players, building the relationships. So as we know, MLB, and again, MPB and KBO, they're big beasts. There's a lot of there's a lot of players. There's a lot of the opportunities that and we have to compete with other parts of the world, particularly in the southern hemisphere in this sort of winter league space. But I think we're showing that we're a good, strong, capable league, safe. Again, I think there's also that I think there's two parts. The MLB interest in making this region strong, and the clubs who've built the MLB clubs to the ABL clubs that have built these sustainable relationships. We're getting regular players from teams based on building trust and building really good relationships. So I think it's a combination of the on-field, certainly, and then the country. And what I'd like to add to the mix is to go, and hey, here's a league that you can see in America. So I think that will help a lot. I don't want to overplay the broadcasting, but it helps so many areas to build exposure to the game here, but also interest overseas and strengthen some of these international partnerships.
When you're talking Baseball Australia, myself and Paul Morgan, we believe that it can be the best winter league in the world. We believe that, and this is just reaffirming that. All right, I'm going to ask Cam Vale the final thing, okay? And we're going to go back to what we talked about at the top. And I'm asking the CEO of Baseball Australia one simple question. Will we play baseball in Australia this 2021 season as we sit here on August 13th? I know it's a little bit of a loaded question, but will we play baseball?
Yes.
Gotcha. I love you. I got you.
We will. I mean, I'm not even going to try and put a safety net to it. We will play. We will play this season one way or the other, and it also has the potential to be a very exciting season. If again, we can get to a safer landing, but absolutely the intent is to play. I appreciate for a lot of people how frustrating it is that we can't announce. We're in August and we haven't announced schedules and the like. And it's funny because we probably in March, if I go back to that distant time, we were probably the most advanced, with the teams to go. We want a season announced earlier and any changes we're going to make. But, the intent is overwhelmingly that we will play, we'll find a way to play, and we'll use every means respectfully. We have to follow the standards that are set by our national governments in Australia and New Zealand, and obviously the state governments, but we'll find a way to play this season. And I still honestly feel deep down it will be one of the best seasons ever.
Appreciate your time, my friend. Always a pleasure. And look forward to having you in a couple of weeks when you tell us the official fixture comes out. We'll get you back on then. And thanks for joining us on Talking Baseball Australia, Cam. And best to you, stay safe. And now you get to go back to being the guy at the bottom of the table at home, right? So is that works?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's rare any media review. I want to keep extending and making it longer and longer. Right? I could be here for hours. But happy and next time too to take questions from people. The difficulty is, I'm talking in such generalistic terms,
Right.
and I appreciate that can be frustrating. So next time, let's have something, hard and fast I can be grilled on by you and your listeners and people online. I'm more than happy to take those questions.
Appreciate you.
Beautiful.
There we go. Cam Vale right there on the show. I guess I got us back on screen. We're all back together. It's like a card game. I'm like that guy at the street corner in New York with the shell game. I'm just moving shells around. I'm that guy. Boy, a lot. First off, thanks for Cam Vale for joining us, taking the time. There's a lot to digest there, and I saw you scribbling off screen, scribbling down things. I was scribbling down things. Your reaction, just off the top, what do you think? Is your welcome you guys back to Talking Baseball Australia, baseball's best mate, Dan Vaughan and Paul Morgan with you here on the Friday morning edition, the weekly edition. Knee jerk for you. What stood out in this whole conversation?
Look, I'm probably more confident than I was now, mainly because what I really took from that, and you and I have, at times felt like, lonely men walking into the desert trying to preach this sort of stuff. But broadcast is the future of baseball. There's no doubt about it. To sort of hear Cam's enthusiasm around broadcast, particularly tying in with MLB in terms of, having a league that's good for the country, and can be seen in America. That was the big part for me. Like everything else. And the other big part for me was the influence of other sports. So if cricket can't get it done, if the Australian Open can't happen, if golf can't happen, will baseball get an exemption? Unlikely. So I guess they have to follow the lead of some of the bigger guys as well. So that are probably the two big things that stuck out as well. It's still, as we sit here, August 14th, our state border in Western Australia is still closed. No chance of a team coming in for ABL right now. Victoria is still in lockdown. Half of the country's borders are still closed. Queensland's borders closed. New South Wales' borders virtually closed. New Zealand's closed to us, and I don't think South Korea can come in. So right now you can't. It's not going to happen unless. But at the same time, and where possibly, DV, the biggest silver lining could come through for Cam, and I agree to him with the point in regards to this could be the best season ever, because there is, we'll talk about it later in the show, but, college football has decided to pack them up for the season as well. So ESPN also broadcasts, obviously, in Australia, and there's a lot of shows not going ahead on ESPN right now, and ESPN and Fox Sports are hungry for sports. So it could be the year that baseball get an incredible broadcast deal. Could be the year that it gets the exposure, and it could be over the hump. But what about you, DV? What stuck out for you?
I think the thing that these are the things I starred. I wrote down a lot of stuff here. Integrity. I think that was the one thing that stuck out to me. That they're not going to just trick things up to trick them up, but they're well within the framework of having the ability to weave and do that. Something Major League Baseball didn't do once they got started. Now they've weaved before, but they didn't weave and dodge like they could have, which I think is one of the reasons they're kind of flunking the course right now. Stability with the league. I think it's very important that the league plays. I got that feeling from him too, to survive and to thrive. And that was one of the things I believe the ABL in Baseball Australia will appeal to the Australian government powers that be to maybe loosen up some of the things that would require, the normal protocols might be released a little bit. You mentioned the comparison to cricket. I also got the bubble thing. You and I both agreed the bubble was probably off the table, except in a couple of things. A, perhaps with an outbreak, and I think two, and I think Cam actually mentioned this today in the piece that was on Baseball Australia's website, or maybe it was the Australian Baseball League website, that there could be a bubble potentially in Auckland, because that still may be a problem. And if there's something I read every night, it's the travel restrictions in Australia, because that's something that affects what I do and what we do. Those things, and then as far as the new MLB agreement, I love what he said, and it's something we've said before. And he was very proudful as an Australian to say this. It's a great country, a great place to play. It should be attractive for MLBers to come play. And we've said this now since you and I got together 2012, and we both agree that it's the best winter league. Those things stood out to me. Again, the athletes, the players are going to be very important here. I know that was something that he really, really hammered home as well. And, the fact that, and I think I'm with you. When I saved that question for last, will we have baseball? And granted, it's August, 14th, 13th, whatever it is, wherever you are. And he seemed confident. And it's something we've seen over the last few weeks, players being signed. Jacob Eunice was signed to a contract by Sydney. Of course, Alan D. San Miguel, who we're going to hopefully have on the show next week. I reached out to him today. Alan has already been named the manager for Melbourne last year to defend the Claxton Shield. It's not like they're just raising the white flag and saying we're not going to play. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of positive sides. One more thing, and this is something he jumped off from the top, and they've got some plans. They got plan A, B, and C. There are options on the table. And that's something I think that where Major League had a plan, they were going this one plan. The American Association, which I champion in the States, they had some other plans around as well. And those plans were able to shift on the fly should certain things happen. And they've actually implemented some of those plans along the way. And I like that attitude. So those things all stood out to me. I think, like you, I feel better. And I'd like to know how the fans feel. Do fans feel better? Do you guys who watch this, and there are a lot of you watching, do you feel better? Do you feel better now about what Cam Vale said? Now, granted, yes, there's no schedule out, no fixture, whatever you want to call it. But do you feel better? That's my question. And I think you and I both agree we do feel better despite the sky is falling around us. We feel better.
Yeah, look, I'm where I was, and I'll go back to it, and I liked those points. They've got three clear options. Look, I actually wouldn't even mind the option of, the ABL perhaps releasing three of their options to the fans and just sort of to say, hey, this is what we're thinking, just to keep you guys in the loop. These are kind of the rough options that we're looking at. But I think as long as I'm confident in this league, as long as you can get a broadcast deal done. I think if you can't get a broadcast deal done, I think it's a real uphill battle. You've got to move to a model. You've got to move to a model that is going to find, extra revenue streams and extra revenue and extra exposure for partners and the league to grow. But look, I think, the positive parts about it, I think they really do, at some point, you talk about right now in Australia, it's not, outside of AFL and NRL, which have sort of managed to get by. When you roll into summer and you start rolling that Australian Open, the cricket, the Indian cricket team come in. I mean, if the Indian cricket team doesn't come and play Australia this year, I mean, you're talking enormous amounts of money that cricket's going to lose in Australia. So at some point, I suppose, we still have no idea when a vaccine's going to come, unless you're Vladimir Putin, of course. He's got it sussed. Apparently, the Russians have got it sussed. But
I guess they're going to be playing baseball over there. I guess I don't know.
They just tested 34 people or something and thought it was all right, so they kept moving. But look, it is very. I think and as we've got the comment there, Ben Newton says, I think that's the big part. You've got to kind of stay positive right now. I think everyone can accept the fact. At the end of the day, if no ABL goes ahead because of COVID, because outbreaks happen in the city, you'd have to be an idiot to kind of really be critical about it. But for right now, I guess you got to plan it. Is it likely to happen in its normal sense? Highly, highly unlikely. Could it be, as Cam alluded to, could it be slightly tournament style? Probably. And as he said as well, could it be like MLB, like a couple of double headers here and there? Probably. I don't think anyone expecting to go Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday probably need to change the way you think. It could be like many sports are doing now. It could be everyday kind of thing to get games done. Maybe 3 teams travel, and maybe it's Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth all playing in Perth, and they're playing Monday to Saturday and kind of
Sure.
mixing, and maybe there's 4 teams playing at the same time. So
yeah, I can see. Anyway. Yeah, I can see that. And he actually mentioned in the interview that it's going to be a different season, a great season, but it could be a different season. And that in all sports like that, give me a sport worldwide. It's not been different. You give me a code, and I can tell you it's been different. And you're going to have some differences. Well, what those are, we can sit there and we can go long-winded about that. There are going to be some differences. I will say this: you're seeing what you said. And I can't imagine being in Australia during the holiday period into Australia Day where, the cricket's such a big deal. You got the Big Bash, and there's just so many things that are it's really the Australian celebration that time of year. And you're seeing the same thing going in the States. The NFL is going to play football regardless of how many folks go to the games. You saw a splinter this week. You had some colleges, and it really broke along lines of the part of the country. But West Coast, East Coast said, we're not going to play football. Down south, they're going to play football. And there are places in this country where that's going to get folks' minds off of it. It's going to make the folks feel better. At worst case scenario. Now, you can politicize it all you want to in this country, which United States, which they're going to do anyway. But I think you're seeing the theme is we're going to all try our hardest within the protocols of our government and our health to try to make things as normal as we possibly can. And I think that the good news, and we mentioned this 2 months ago, I talked about this when we first started the show, but we've talked about this several times. All these test cases, Major League Baseball, American Association, Premier League, all these things that have happened, ABL's been taking notes, and they're watching and watching what's going to happen. And I'm with you, staying positive, and I think having something positive will be good. And maybe I'm knee-jerking hit. Let's see here. Here's a question too. I know we got about 10 minutes for you, so I want to get these questions in, and I can wrap up after you go because I know you've got up against the clock. A question asked: how do you manage the local players that work with that model? That I think that probably was, I mentioned the travel things. That was the third thing that I think that we probably should have asked, and we'll have to figure that out. How do you manage? Because so many of our guys have commitments that beyond playing baseball.
That's a huge part, and that may be where some of the creativity might have to come into play. And like if think of Dan Schmidt, the first guy that comes off my head. Dan Schmidt, full-time job, obviously. Maybe it's paid a little bit of money for playing for the Heat, probably not enough to sustain life. Many other guys, guys over in Sydney and wherever as well. If you have to kind of go around that model of isolating and different things, you either have to do one or two things. The Baseball Australia have to pay these guys to a level that they can play. The owners need to play themselves, or you have to count. It's going to be a very, very intensive MLB centric league, which then could very well be the case, because you think about it now, all those taxi squads. I mean, I'm not sure whether they're getting quality at bats at the moment, whether they're getting quality reps at the moment. And if you're a Major League Baseball team with guys on that AA, AAA radar, like maybe a fair chunk of the season is going to be taken up with imports and guys. I don't know if there's enough money in the teams to kind of sustain to pay the local guys as well, DV, and that's a real issue as well.
Yeah, and I will add this too. This is where I think the rosters could be flexible this year. They're probably going to see some of that where they may expand the rosters. Maybe you can carry, if you can carry 25 to 30 on, that would probably help a great deal. And that means home and away, not just, and granted, it becomes financial, but I think that's something the Major League Baseball, the American Association have all done, is carry more. Question there from Peter as well. He says, oops, sorry, I had it up on the screen there. He says, and I'll go ahead and read it for you. Personally more comfortable back in June before Victoria's situation emerged. Internal borders were closed and then opening, and talking to Australia, New Zealand bubble was strong. Now it's crystal ball situation looking to summer. Yeah, and I read this yesterday, or actually this morning getting up in the States, that, things look like they were trending up, and it kind of, he brings a good point up. This situation will remain fluid, and I think that's where, partner, you've got to be prepared to weave and bob as we go along. Yes, we want to play these games in this format, but we got to be prepared for a weave and a bob, don't we?
Well, absolutely. And as Peter accurately says, and I think the two questions for Peter and Matt are like such incredibly poignant questions when you're talking about the league going forward. But as it stands right now, there is zero chance that the league, like as it stands right on this day, there is zero chance the league functions because as we know, they don't have a broadcast deal right this second. Borders aren't open between New Zealand and Australia. Borders aren't open from Western Australia, as I've mentioned earlier. So right now, like the league doesn't have a shot as it goes today. You are in many ways sort of hoping a prayer that you kind of things go okay. Now the big questions always come back to, I mean, New Zealand, Auckland shut down, like Jacinda Ardern, their Prime Minister, shut down Auckland for 4 days because 3 days based off having 4 new cases. I think it might have gone up to 8 new cases now. So talk about Auckland, is certainly a place where the Tuatara are obviously based, is clearly going down the extreme safe view for COVID-19, which is getting a lot of praise universally. But how on earth you could possibly think that Auckland would allow in Australians, Americans at this time in the globe is an impossible thought to have right now. And Auckland, to be fair, like the Geelong Korea, the two teams who have a broadcast deal.
Yep.
So, you could argue that potentially, Auckland becomes one of your hubs and Geelong Korea becomes one of your hubs and Perth, because realistically, Perth, Geelong Korea and Auckland are the 3 clubs who are best equipped from a broadcast standpoint to put out a high-level broadcast, just purely I'm talking from camera equipment, from cameramen, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking anything else outside of that. Look, I'm sort of with Peter. I want to be as positive as possible. I want to be positive as I can be, but it is very difficult to suggest. I think it's still exactly as Peter says. It is an absolute crystal ball. A lot of things have to go really, really right. Victoria's on track for 100 deaths per week, I believe, which is the worst Australia's been by a mile at the moment. Things are probably as bad as they've ever been in this country right this minute. So, it's hard to plan, but you've got to plan.
Yeah, and let me give you, because only you got a couple minutes for you. Let me give you go back to June for me. When June 3rd rolled that around, I knew the T-Bones weren't going to play baseball in the American Association, but I also knew looking forward that I'd probably have a pretty quiet summer and we'd probably go on vacation late July and we'd get to the fall and be ready for college football and have Texas Tech games to go to and watching the NFL and doing some fall things, watching my nephew play Friday Night Lights, all that stuff, and then going to the ABL season. I just thought it was going to go. The crystal ball at that time was it's going to get better and stay positive. Well, since that time, no season tickets for Texas Tech. They're going to have 15,000, 20,000 fans in a 60,000 seat stadium at best. And who gets those is a whole fiasco. Cowboys may have fans, may not. We're going to play the NFL. Some colleges aren't going to play. We got to wear masks all the time. We can't travel anywhere. I don't know when I can go to Australia and how long I got to sit in a hotel. Can I even get there? I got to swim. I mean, this crystal ball suddenly got murky, but we got to stay positive. I totally agree, but this thing changes from June until now, and I guess we're due some. It's going to get better at some point, partner, right? So my theory is and maybe this is just too simple. Maybe it's evangelical. We want to call it. Maybe it's too dreamer, but this thing's going to cycle the good way at some point. I just hope that the hourglass is working in the ABL in the game's favor.
I agree. And look, if I was to take a really optimistic point of it, I would suggest that, if baseball can, even if they play in a bubble, for example, if you can get a broadcast model where baseball fans are paying $50, maybe you go a bit wheels off, maybe not wheels off, but maybe you go a different route in the whole Kickstarter campaigns. Maybe try to get 5,000 subscribers, if that's possible, at $50 a month or $50 for the seasons, $250,000 into the coffers. New merchandise deals, like you maybe try to bring something out just slightly differently, maybe make the sport like the great Aussie battler and position the story like that.
Right.
You could definitely pull something off, but it's just right now I think, as a baseball community as well, and I'm talking about, the guys on ABL fans, and, there's about 10 different fan sites these days. I think everyone just needs to band together.
And we love them all. We love all you guys. We're glad you're here, by the way. We love them.
We do, absolutely. And, and that's the thing. Baseball has such a strong community in Australia, albeit emerging, as I like that, what Cam said, an emerging sport. It's time for everyone to rally together. And the league can happen, but it just can't. And this is what Major League Baseball has done wrong. It can happen, but it can't happen how you think it would happen. Like it just, I think as of right now, probably Auckland's your best choice. It would be a bit odd having the Australian Baseball League primarily in New Zealand, but if that can happen, then and then all the games are on Sky Sports, friendly time zone to the US. Maybe that's your best bet. And in Australia, everyone chips in $50 a month or 100, whatever it may well be. But it can happen. But it needs to be some very creative thinking, DV. But to your point before about the other, I think the elephant in the room, in my opinion, is, and the biggest hurdle of all. I'll give you an example of cinemas. Cinemas is a great example at the moment. So cinemas are back open, but there is no big real releases from Hollywood blockbusters. So not a lot of people are going to cinemas at the moment. So therefore they're suffering big time. But they're also suffering from the fact that maybe people are a little bit, everything the media tells you is stay out, indoor places are bad for spreading the virus, et cetera, et cetera. So many of cinemas haven't bothered or have opened up and reduced capacities. Now, if you own one of these teams and you can see down the line a loss financially is coming big time, there's got to be some incentive as well for teams to play from an owner point of view, because you know better than anyone, DV. It is sports about money, and owners sometimes they're not in the game to donate money. They want to make money.
Yes, it's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business. While we're trying to grow the game, it's a real complicated web. I know you got to roll. We could go on for a long time. I know you got to roll. You got hard up against the hour. I'll let you go. But by the way, just so you'll know, I had a chance. You may have heard me mention earlier, but Alan D. San Miguel scheduled to join us next week, and looking forward to having D. San on us. Messaged him today, and he was watching earlier, so all good. Just want to give you that, and I will catch up with you on the back end, and I'll kind of wrap this thing up and take a few more questions and comments as well, partner. But I'll let you go, and appreciate your baseball's best mate right there, Paul Morgan. Thanks, mate.
The only thing I'm sad about, DV, is we never got to the point of the home run / error from the Texas Rangers.
There is a lot, this rundown thing. I sent you a rundown that had a bunch of stuff on it, but we were all hinged on how the interview went, and it went swimmingly. So because of that, things like we'll have to get to that at some point, mate. All right, good on you, mate. Enjoy
take care, stay safe.
Enjoy the coffee.
Will do.
There he is, Paul Morgan, my broadcast partner in Australia, and feeling much better about calling games with him in Australia this year. I want to get to AJ's comments too, and I'll give you what I can give you, and I'll put it back on the board there. Let me pull my graphic down there. Big opportunity for baseball. So many hurdles, though. I'm positive about the approach. I'd be surprised if the season starts in 2020. And again, I think you got to be positive. I think Cam's approach is positive. But here's a guy, he's in Victoria, and he's like under siege, basically, from people asking questions and what's this league going to do? And I feel for the guy, and he's really, I'll tell you this about Cam Vale, and I don't think he minds me sharing this, but he has worked, and he kind of referenced this a bit in the interview. There's been scores of schedules and scenarios they've gone through. At one point, back in early part of the summer, part of the winter, summer in North America, he'd gone through something like 29 different schedule variations. And that was just back then. So I know he's worked tirelessly trying to get this thing done. And I agree with you, AJ. It may take creativity. Again, it's creativity, weaving on the fly, moving this thing, ability to say, okay, we're going to start November 20th. We're going to start January 1st, and we're going to do it this way. It's what the American Association did in the States. They announced that the schedule would go on at this date. We're still going to try our hardest. We'll give you an update at this point, which is what the ABL is doing. Then when they gave the update, they gave the plan, like Paul mentioned, a couple of scenarios, but we're going to start in this window. That window was of, I believe, June 15th through July 1st. That's what happened. Their window would eventually come out with a new schedule around the 1st of July. They were going to start on that July 4th weekend, and these teams are going to play. Now, what happened with the American Association, which is different, is that the American Association has 12 teams. Well, not all 12 teams could play due to COVID restrictions at the time. For example, my club in Kansas City with the Missouri-Kansas border right there. We're on the Kansas side, but we're just 5 minutes from Missouri, and the metro area encompasses 2 states, 2 sets of laws, 2 sets of rules. It's like being the border of Queensland and New South Wales at Coolangatta, right? It's the very same thing. You cross back and forth there, so it's a very similar deal. But we had different rules everywhere. We had 2 teams in Texas under some rules. The long and the short of it was they had the plans in place, and they were able to make the move and weave from 12 teams to 6 teams. And as the season's gone on, they originally started with 3 bubbles, and they've gone to 1 bubble, and 2 of the teams returned home. So that's been good news. So all good right there. Let's see here. What do we got here? Let me see what I got to pull this up here. I'm sorry, guys. But I agree with you, AJ. It's a huge opportunity for Baseball Australia, for the ABL, for our game, for all of us as fans as well. By the way, reset the show for you. This is Talking Baseball Australia. My name's Dan Vaughan. My partner, Paul Morgan, had to head to the office. I don't blame him. Some of us actually work for a living, not me apparently, but glad to have him with us. What we're talking about here is the interview with Cam Vale, which was at the top of the hour, and I encourage you to go back and watch that interview. And Cam was so gracious of his time. Let's see here. Peter says minor league players definitely with the cancellation of MILB need the bats and pitchers innings. I read a while back that the usual South America winter competitions are likely no-go. Could be a real opportunity for Australia to fill that void, but the MLB or maybe teams individually would need to fund it. I think that probably is going on behind the scenes. I will pull the curtain back for you to a degree. For the most part, when let's just say the Orioles called and say, hey, we're going to send players to wherever, to Perth, for example, back in the day, and I'm watching Baltimore and Philly on the screen to my left, the Orioles would foot part of that bill back in the day, and still the Rays, when they send players to the West, they foot part of that bill. They pay for the accommodation, help the players on the flights, those prospects. Now the independent players, the guys like a Dylan Unsworth who was signed by the Heat last year, those guys come over on their own accord. Now, granted, those contracts oftentimes with the Heat or with Sydney or Brisbane or whoever, they'd work out and negotiate a deal. Part of the contract might be travel, accommodations, whatever. That's gone on. But Major League Baseball will definitely, I would think, help foot some of that bill. And I can see that happening because you got a lot of prospects. And Cam mentioned this in to a degree, and also in the piece that was on the ABL website yesterday. You got a lot of prize prospects who aren't getting at bats this year, who didn't get a season at all at Double-A or High A or whatever. They need at bats. And the sheer situation in Venezuela, not just the fact that it's COVID, Venezuela's situation in general is rough right now politically, but Venezuela, Mexico has been really, really hit hard by this COVID situation. And the winter leagues look to be a little dicey at best. And Australia seems to be where that's being maintained could be the right option. So I think you're right there. And I think you'll see a handful of really good prospects you've not seen before. We've already been seeing that anyway. You're just going to see that push more and more to the forefront. What also I will say from Peter, from Team Australia's point of view, the team needs at bats. You've got some guys who aren't playing right now, members of Team Australia, who are not getting at bats, who are not getting innings. They need those innings for the chance to compete for an Olympic spot next March in Tokyo, for the Tokyo Olympics next winter and summer in Tokyo, but winter in Australia. So it works that way too. This league needs the at-bats. Those players need the at-bats for Team Australia. So let's see here. Curtain pulling. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Sorry about that. It turns out I don't remember how the Central Time works, and I'm an hour late. Tim, it's okay, mate. Our show always airs, well, not always, because sometimes we have things happen. We shoot for 8 a.m. in the west of Australia on Friday morning, because that's Paul's time zone, 7 p.m. in North America for me, which is in Texas. And we adjust accordingly around there. So that'd be, what is that, wherever you are. I'm not sure what time zone you're in, Tim, but you get the point. But I'm glad you're along. I'm glad all you guys are firing these questions away. Let's see here. What did Anthony say? Have to hand it to Cam Vale. Tough gig. It won't be easy to roll over, especially when you're living in Victoria. They need to make it work somehow to keep the momentum going. I agree. And I think that's the pressing need here because it was a great season last year. The leaps and bounds with Geelong, Korea, and Auckland, the two teams he really talked about who were probably most affected by this situation, and it's the two best TV situations as well for your league. Yes, I feel for him, and it's definitely – and I tip my cap. I can tell you he and I have had several conversations back and forth since June. And really, I talk to Cam quite often, and I consider him a good mate, and he's always been really good to our show and good to Paul and I and what we do and supporting our work in the West as well. But I can tell you it's been a definite hard go for him, and it's got to be tough now as he's kind of in an Alamo, so to speak, if you know your U.S. history, Texas history more like. Let's see here. Curtain pulling, yes, and appreciate it, Tim. Appreciate that. But yes, the two good hey, once in a while, a pretty good point. I'll let you guys still fire questions away as well. I'm going to give you guys a couple of things. Again, Paul and I had these things for the show timed out. I had the show timed out, interview for 15 minutes. Here's the highlight. But I knew once I woke up this morning and realized this interview was coming, and once I heard it, I emailed Paul immediately saying, this thing may be pretty good for just carrying the whole show. So that's kind of what we're doing here. I will. How do I turn the subtitles off? I don't know that. Can I do that for you? Let me see if I can turn the subtitles off. I'm seeing them too, but I don't know why I'm seeing them on my show. But I don't know, Jared. I think you can turn up. Can I do that? I don't know. Partner, Paul, if you're still watching in the office, if we can turn the subtitles off, turn them off. But I don't believe we have the ability to do that. A couple things to give you guys. I want to give you guys a couple of items here that crossed the last couple of days or so as far as EBL-centric items. And let me pull these up. First off, these are things we were going to talk about. We'll push them to next week. Over-under on Astros bench-clearing issues. Well, I think it's basically a weekly deal. The future for baseball in places like Buffalo, Portland, San Antonio, Las Vegas, all may be hinging to a degree on what happens with the Buffalo situation with Toronto. Paul mentioned, too, no football or other sports. Here's the deal with that. Let me give you guys this, too, from the Australian point of view. If these colleges don't play sports in the fall, it's highly unlikely they're going to play in the spring. These conferences are going to play. If the Big 12, the SEC play football in the fall, you're going to see high-level college baseball in the spring. Would that be the College World Series as we've seen it the last over the years? May not be the case. I did see the NCAA may scrap their championship. But what you're seeing right now in U.S. sports should probably be of note to you guys because it does affect baseball. It does affect the collegiate level for guys getting scholarships from Australia. But there's a shift going on in U.S. sports right now from the NCAA model to perhaps a independent go our own way model. And I think you're going to see that going forward. So kind of watch that in the back burner as we go forward. That's why, especially if U.S. sport goes forward in the fall, it's going to really bode well for baseball in the spring, especially for international baseball as well. Okay, other items of note. I mentioned Jacob Eunice. Sydney had locked up the services of the 27-year-old, sixth all-time in modern-day ABL on 315 games. He's a guy I think I've seen forever. I mean, he's been playing for quite a while. Here, let's pull this up here for you too as well. Here we go. But a little vid as well of Jacob. But he's a guy that's been holding down that second base spot for those Blue Sox for a while. I love those Blue Sox kits right there. But Eunice being picked up 35 games last year, 263 the average, 27-year-old, as I mentioned. He told SydneyBlueSox.com, I can't wait for the season to start, give fans something to cheer for, making big changes and exciting times there with the Blue Sox. And good to see that Jacob Eunice, a big part of things. When you see guys like that getting signed, they only bode well for the ABL going forward and having something positive in the tank for the ABL. But a good job to see the 266 hitter career-wise. And he's a 1 RBI shy of the 100 club in the ABL. So that's pretty big news as well. Of course, part of that 2016 club, 2016 under-23s that was the big heroes there in Mexico on the national team, and also played on the national team in 18 as well in that Japan series and against the Doosan Bears. But former Twins farmhand, always a Twins farmhand, it seems like, don't we? Let's see here as we fire the questions away. I'm sorry about that, guys. There you go. Thank you very much, AJ, for doing that. Appreciate you having that there. Yeah, thank you guys for helping out. A couple of items as well. First off, Aaron Whitefield was optioned back to the training complex with the Twins on Monday, and it was optioned to Double-A, I believe it's Mobile, am I correct with that? Their Double-A club, and sent there. Basically what it is that he was taken off the big league roster. Some sense there because, again, the rosters were at 30 to 28. Now they're going down to 26. So some of these guys getting sent back to the training complex or put to their double or triple A ball clubs. It doesn't affect his status as a Twins farmhand at the moment. And it's an option. So what it means is that, and we've talked about this before, you've got 4 option years, and this is his first one. Aaron Whitefield, who had his major league debut a couple of weeks ago, is off the Twins' active roster in the big leagues, but back in their minor league complex. Also, other notes as well this week. Quickly, Lewis Thorpe, as I'll kind of blow through all this for you guys here. Lewis Thorpe, we thought he might go back to the rotation. I wanted to give this to you guys. There was actually an interesting piece in one of the Twins blogs. The Twins have a twinsdaily.com blog. Interesting stuff, really, and I wish we could go through it. Maybe we'll dissect it some next week. For the year in 5 ball games, Lewis, the 0-1, the young man from Victoria, 5.06 in 5 ball games, 10 2/3, 14 hits, 6 earned, 6 walks, 6 strikeouts. He was in the rotation, out of the rotation, but he's had a couple of decent outings in relief for the week. Actually, one moved to the pen, had a bad inning on the 8th against Kansas City, 3 hits and 3 runs against the Royals, but then bounced back with 2 scoreless innings on the 12th. That was 2 nights ago at Milwaukee with 2 hits, 2 strikeouts, no walks, which is key for him. He's got to keep those walks down. He's a lefty. His velocities are down a bit. They keep talking about at Twins Daily that Lewis Thorpe's velocity is below 90. And if he's got to keep that around 90 as a lefty, and you throw strikes, you don't have to throw 95 as a lefty, but he's below 90. That's a little concern. But the good news is they're hoping that he can transition back to a bullpen piece and really be a big mainstay as a left-handed bullpen option for the Twins. So that's kind of what's in the works with Lewis Thorpe right there. Of course, in the big leagues with the Twins. Liam Hendriks, he just rocks and rolls along, doesn't he? What's Liam do? Just continues to do what he does, and that's just pitch well. He's been outstanding. I really only had 1 bad outing this year. Listen to these numbers for Liam this year. Liam's numbers this year, 9 1/3, 7 hits, 2 runs, both earned, only 2 walks, 14 strikeouts in 9 1/3 innings. That's going to get done. This week, he had 3 ball games since our show last week. A save on the 8th against the Astros. Only game he allowed a run, though, but got the save. Then he came back with 2 scoreless outings against Houston and the Halos of California, the Angels, as we have to call them, the LA Angels of Anaheim. A total of 3 innings this week, 5 strikeouts, 3 hits, earned runs. So good stuff from Liam Hendriks, who continues to rock and roll and do what he does. Again, just good to see him budding into a huge star. Quickly, too, to wrap this thing up here as we check your guys' questions. Yes, I will get to that in just a moment, though. Quickly, feel like you should have had a 40-man roster the whole year to make sure people got in and play. You know, that's a good question and a good comment, Tim. I think when they go to the offseason in the player development contracts and the collective bargaining agreement, which is all up next year, comes into effect, I think they'll revisit some of this stuff, this 40-man stuff, because it's a bit of a mess. There's a handful of players who are on that same boat. And if you're asking or questioning what I'm talking about, the 40-man roster is the actual big league roster. It's not the actual playing roster every day. You have 40 players who are on your big league roster. You can protect them. Those are the guys that you don't have to that you keep on that big league roster, and they're not in the minor league system. And that is, I think there'll be some adjustment there. It should be. I do know, and I read a couple of pieces back in June and May, that was one of the big things the players were concerned about was service time, the extension of that and how that'll work, because that also affects players going to arbitration and their options and what have you, and also the 40-man roster situation. I think they'll have to revisit this at some point. And this is, again, where Major League Baseball may or may not got it right. I can tell you the American Association has already designated what they're going to do roster-wise going forward. All the players who were signed from other teams will go back to their old teams next year. And it was simple as that. There was no one owns their rights. They go back to the previous team no matter who they played for. Pretty simple. Very good comment, though. Very good stuff. It's a long September. It is. Let's see here. Jared asked, did Cam talk about the 2021 season? Yes, it is in the early part of the show, and you can go back and watch on a replay. I asked Cam Vale point blank, will we play baseball in Australia in 2021? He said yes. The schedule is probably 2 weeks away, and you'll probably hear that probably right here on this show. We might even have something with Cam, bring that on the show here in a couple of weeks' time as well. So good stuff all the way around. One more final note. I was going to give you guys this, and I mentioned this. I feel for Warwick Saupold in Korea. We haven't talked about Waz in a while. He's on a club that's won 21 games and lost 58. They are 29 games off the pace. The next closest team to them, those Hanwha Eagles, is the SK's Wyverns. They are 23.5 back. They're still 5.5 behind them. I feel for Waza, but boy, talk about a guy battling. It's a guy, he's battling, trying to find his way and trying to, try to hang with them. So far this year, numbers 5-9, a 5.12, 18 ball games, 17 starts, 102 innings, 69 runs, 58 earned, 18 walks. Those are way down, and 59 strikeouts. And again, Saupold, he's been a workhorse out there every fifth day for the Eagles, despite the fact that they've had a dreadful go of it this year. Tip the cap to Warwick to hang it in there. And, boy, just not a lot around him, but just good to see him fighting. We haven't talked much about him, but, again, Waza doing his thing in Korea in the KBL. A couple of things to chat about real quickly, and we'll give you these as well. So we wrap this thing up, rounding third, heading for home here on Talking Baseball Australia, baseball's best mate. I want to talk about alumni. This is something I think that you go back 4 or 5 years ago, and you remember guys like, Ronald Acuna and D.T. Gregorius playing as well. There was a time when you wouldn't see guys from the ABL doing what you're seeing now from places like this. Didi going yard right here, hitting a bomb right there against the Braves. Of course, Acuna across the dugout as well. Again, there was a time you didn't see ABL alums playing in the big leagues, and you're seeing them now left and right all the time, and that is so cool for our game. And I think when you see Cam Vale announcing today that the ABL and the Major League Baseball have extended their agreement for 3 more years, that only bodes well for our league and only bodes well for us seeing more guys like that going forward. I mean, that's huge for our league, Acuna as well had homered 3 times in that series against the Philadelphia Phillies. He had a big week, so seeing him as well is huge. And also, former Heat infielder, big week as well, sparked a comeback, actually got the Rays back in a ball game against those hated and dreaded New York Yankees. And Mike, now here's the interesting part, and Paul and I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but we called him Mike Brosseau back in the day, but they're calling him Brasso. Mike Brosseau, there's a home run for him against the Yankees right there. See you later. Saw that with the Heat a couple of years ago. Look at that. He just in the wheelhouse. Thank you very much. That thing was smoked. Watch this swing. Boy, it's a thing of beauty. That's a no-doubter right there in the Trop, and there he goes. Good to see Mike Brosseau right there. That was a big part of a comeback win for the Rays. They trailed in that ballgame 3-1. He got it 3-2. They came back and walked it off, 4-3 winners of the Yankees. That was a couple of nights ago. The 26-year-old Indiana man has been great so far this year. as that got the raise to 8-8. He had a big night that 2 nights ago, 2-4 in that big win for the Rays. Couple of items to pass along to you. Indy notes quickly here as I want to round this thing up. This has gone a little longer than I wanted it to go, but I want to round this thing up. Adelaide Giants, Mikey Reynolds, third in the American Association, batting .336. Former Heater Curl Prime, batting .319 for Fargo. Michael Krause, Canberra, Melbourne, Sydney. He's got 8 home runs, third in the American Association currently right now. So good to see him rocking and rolling as well there in the American Association. A couple of numbers as well. I got to go back to 2013 and 2012-13 season. Casey Hobson, the son of Butch Hobson, the manager, former Red Sox manager, and now the current manager of the Chicago Dogs. He's got 25 runs batted in, 6th in the American Association. So good to see that from him. Thomas Dormany of Sydney this last year leads the American Association with 5 wins. He is also second in strikeouts at 44. Actually leads the league in strikeouts, at 44, and second in ERA at 2.68. And then David Holmberg, a couple of Adelaide guys doing some pretty good things this year. Reynolds and Holmberg in the American Association, second in wins with the 4, and he's third in strikeouts with 41, and he's second ERA, a 2.50 earned run average. So there's a lot more in there. There's a lot with Nate Sampson's at St. Paul. On and on about guys who are playing in the American Association, former ABLers or current ABLers. But there's just some highlights right there, some of the guys doing their things right there. So that gives you an idea of what's going on around the American Association. Last call on questions, comments. Let's see here. That is a big. Yeah, Tim. Hanwha is scuffling again. I had to do a double take on that, and I've been watching them quite a bit and kind of got away the last couple of weeks. 21-58. And here's Wazza going out there every fifth day doing his thing, and I tip my cap to him. What a great guy. It doesn't have fans to make him better. Although I do believe they're going to let more in coming up next week. If I did read that right, one of the Korean papers, I do believe. Let's see what else we got here. Anything else? Last call on questions and comments for you guys. Again, glad you're along. This is Talking Baseball Australia. We're baseball's best mate. My name is Dan Vaughan. I'm the voice of the Kansas City T-Bones and one of the voices of Talking Baseball Australia, which we carry the broadcast of the Perth Heat. My broadcast partner is Paul Morgan, and he was with us earlier from Perth. Also, we Simon Isons is part of our crew, and Kid McGee, former Heat manager, of course, former Heater, and the Iceman, and Kid McGee. So you're maybe wondering what my credentials are, and those are, and I've been with the ABL working down there since 2012-13. So it's definitely ingrained big time in my DNA, so to speak. Also coming up, we've got for you guys this show every Friday. Again, I mentioned earlier that it's 7 o'clock in North America Central Time, 8 a.m. Western Australia time on Friday. That's when this show airs. You can follow us on Facebook. That's right. Just go to Facebook and Talking Baseball Australia. Pretty simple. I say simple. I say it's simple. I sometimes drop the ball trying to find it, but you can find us right there. Baseball is best made all year long. That's what we like to call ourselves. And we try to cover the game. And there we go, as we cover the game for you guys from an Australian point of view all season long. And there we go. Baseball's our Team Spencer hats too. Our good looking Team Spencer lids right there. But I invite you guys to join us right here on Facebook Live every Friday morning in the West. And of course, we always take your questions, comments. Don't forget next week, the man, the myth, he is the guy. I'm telling you, he is an Australian. He's already legendary status to me. Alan D. San Miguel will stop by and catch us up on his time. He's with the Kansas City Royals organization right now in their bubble and T-Bone Stadium in Kansas City, where I work in the U.S. summers as well. Follow us all season long right there. There we go. Follow us on Talking Baseball Australia. As I mentioned, there's our Twitter handles right there. And follow Paul Morgan and myself. Love to have you guys follow us. We're friendly. We're harmless. We will definitely answer and respond any and every time we can. Also, we have something for you guys too that we do. We do this every Saturday morning. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up down under, you can check out the it's our. Basically, we called it the call of the bullpen. I can't even think of it for a second. We do this. We go call the pin. We call the left-hander or the right-hander, and we give you a highlight of this show, a little 2-minute recap of this show. We'll do that for you guys tomorrow on Twitter. So go to Talking Baseball Australia and see it and check it out on Paul's channel and on my channel right there. There you go. There they are right there. A big thanks to Cam Vale, a CEO, Baseball Australia. A big thanks to him. A big thanks to my partner, Paul Morgan. I love you, mate, and miss you, and look forward to catching up to all you guys. Thanks to all you folks who joined us. Questions, comments worldwide from here in North America, also in the beautiful Southern land as well. So thankful for you guys. I keep saying this to all my listeners and viewers with the T-Bones, and I'll say it with you guys as well. Virtual hugs to everybody. Love y'all. Please be kind. Please be safe. Show some empathy. And the goal is for us all to come out of this thing better in the end. And I think we will. We're all going to be better in the long haul when this whole thing, this crazy 2020 is behind us. Again, thanks for joining us. I appreciate the kind words for everybody joining us and joining us along here. Join us next week at this same time. Baseball's best mate. Talking Baseball Australia right now. Let's go ahead and play that close. I love this close. It's great. It's what it's all about. It's take me out the ball game. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. We'll see you guys next week right here on Talking Baseball Australia. Baseball's best mate all year long.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root.